Okay, so you know how everyone's always talking about meetings?
Mhm.
Well, today we're going deep on meetings, but specifically in, like, the world of academia. You know,
Right.
like, we found this super interesting piece on how to make meetings actually matter.
Okay.
And it got me thinking,
Yeah.
how much of this stuff actually applies to, you know, professors and committees,
Mhm.
all those faculty meetings?
Well, that's a good question. Academia definitely has its own, like, meeting culture. It's kind of its own thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's see if these principles can actually help us make those meetings, those faculty gatherings or department brainstorming sessions more productive.
Right. Even those crazy committee meetings.
Oh, yeah, those can be rough. But okay, so the article really stresses that, like, the first thing you got to do is figure out what the purpose of the meeting is,
Hmm.
like, before you even look at the agenda.
Yeah.
But I don't know, in academia, is the purpose always that clear? I mean, sometimes it feels like we're just meeting to meet. You're right, sometimes it is very straightforward. Like if you're reviewing grant proposals
Hmm.
or, you're on a hiring committee, you know what you're there for.
Yeah.
But you're right, things can get kind of fuzzy when it comes to those, big faculty meetings or department discussions.
Is that because academics are always juggling so many things at once?
Exactly. Research, teaching, mentoring, plus all the service to the university, it's a lot to balance.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And honestly, sometimes those meeting agendas just become like a dumping ground for every single issue that's out there.
It's true.
So it's really hard to focus.
So are you saying some academic meetings just shouldn't exist at all?
Maybe we could streamline a few.
Maybe.
But I think the real point is to make sure the meetings we do have are actually useful and make things happen.
Right. Okay. So this article, it talks about different ways to make agendas, like better.
Hmm.
They talk about round robins and pair shares, even SWOT analysis, which I thought was only a business thing.
Right.
I don't know. Can you imagine a bunch of literature professors doing a SWOT analysis on, like, their curriculum?
Some of these ideas can actually be really useful in academia, like round robins.
Okay.
They can be great for making sure every faculty member gets to speak,
Right.
especially the newer professors who might not feel comfortable speaking up in a big group.
I see. Yeah. But won't that make the meetings last even longer? Academics love a good discussion.
Oh, for sure. That's a valid point. So you have to be even more careful about how you manage time on the agenda when you're working with academics.
Mm-hmm.
And you might even need someone who's really good at facilitating to keep things on track and kind of gently, move things along when needed.
Right, right. Okay, so keeping everyone on topic, the source also says that it's important to only invite the people who absolutely need to be at the meeting.
Right.
But is that even realistic in academia? Like, doesn't everyone want to have a say and be kept in the loop?
Yeah, it's definitely a balancing act. Inclusivity is important in academia, but like they say, too many cooks in the kitchen can make things messy.
For sure.
And what often happens is you get this meeting creep. Someone says, oh, let's get input from faculty, and suddenly your small meeting turns into this huge thing.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that happen.
Yeah.
So, like, how do you actually do that? How do you make sure the right people are there, but you're not, leaving anyone out?
I think the key is to make sure everyone knows what their role is. Like, before the meeting even starts, you need to figure out who's actually making decisions
Okay.
versus who's just there to give their opinion, you know?
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so the article also talks about ground rules for meetings.
Right.
And the one they really focus on is, like, one conversation at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you actually enforce that with a bunch of academics who, let's be honest, are super passionate about their ideas and love to share them?
Ground rules are definitely important for any meeting, but they might need to be, like, adapted for academia.
Okay, so, like, how?
Well, one thing that's become a big deal is, like, etiquette.
Oh, yeah, what's that?
Basically, it's really distracting when half the room is checking email or on social media
Uh-huh.
while someone's trying to talk about something important.
It's true. Like, we're trying to talk about the future of the English department, and someone's busy posting cat pictures.
Exactly. So setting some clear rules about, how people can use technology can make a huge difference.
Got it. So less cat pictures, more focus on the meeting.
Right. Another ground rule that's really important in academia is to, like, agree to disagree respectfully.
That's probably especially important in the humanities where things can get pretty philosophical.
Exactly. You want people to, like, debate and share ideas, but you also want to make sure everyone stays, respectful and the conversation is productive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. You just got to be upfront and ask for clarification.
Like, what would you say?
You could be like, I'm not totally sure what the main thing we're supposed to be focusing on today. Could someone, like, explain what we're trying to accomplish?
Right. Being direct, but, like, polite? I like it. But what if the problem isn't so much not knowing what the purpose is, but it's like all the different personalities in the room? Like
Yeah.
everyone's got a strong opinion and they're all talking at once.
Yeah, that classic academic debate, that can turn into a meeting meltdown pretty fast.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen. Like, one time, this faculty meeting went totally off the rails because someone brought up tenure policies when they were supposed to be talking about the budget.
Oh.
It was crazy.
So, like, how do you deal with that? Can you even control a room full of academics when they all want to talk?
It's tough,
Oh.
but it is possible. In those situations, you got to rely on those ground rules even more. And the person running the meeting might have to, like, step in more often,
Okay.
redirect the conversation, encourage people to listen to each other, remind them that they're all supposed to be working towards the same goal.
So it's like you need a referee.
Yeah, kinda.
But even with the best intentions, things can get sidetracked. Like, you're supposed to be discussing curriculum changes, and then suddenly everyone's arguing about, like, the philosophy of education.
Exactly.
Then what?
That's where the parking lot comes in handy. It lets you say, hey, that's a good point, but we got to stay focused right now.
Right, so it's not ignoring those points. It's just, like, putting them aside for later.
Right.
Okay, now let's talk about those monster agendas.
Oh, yeah.
The ones that are pages long. You're looking at it and you're like, are we ever going to get out of here?
It's like they took everything anyone ever wanted to talk about and put it all into one meeting.
Seriously. So what do you do with an agenda like that? Just accept that you're going to be stuck in that meeting forever.
Well, you can try to prioritize. Like, at the very beginning, ask everyone, what are the 3 most important things we need to talk about today?
Okay.
And then just focus on those.
So being selective.
Yeah, and anything that doesn't make the cut, you can either, like, delegate it to a smaller group or schedule a whole other meeting to talk about it.
Right. Breaking it down to smaller pieces. Okay, so it sounds like even when meetings are kind of a mess, there are things you can do to make them better.
Exactly. Remember, you're going to be in a lot of meetings as an academic, so if you can make those meetings even a little bit more productive, it makes a big difference.
It's true. And speaking of making a difference, if you're someone who really likes working in a busy academic environment and, can handle a lot of meetings, you might want to check out academicjobs.com.
They have tons of different jobs, from teaching to administration.
That's cool. So, we've talked about a lot of, like, general strategies for making meetings better. But what about those people who are just, like, really difficult to deal with?
Oh, yeah.
Like, what about that colleague who always has to be the center of attention, or the one who's always negative, or the one who loves to argue?
Those are definitely the trickiest situations. You need a whole other set of skills for that.
Okay, so let's talk about that. What do we do about those people?
You know what? I think that's a good place to stop for now. We've covered a lot of ground today. Everything from setting a clear purpose for the meeting to taming those monster agendas. And we even talked about, like, how to manage some of those difficult personalities that can make meetings so stressful.
Yeah, we have. But don't worry, we're not leaving you hanging. We'll be back with part 3 of our deep dive, and we're going to tackle those tricky interpersonal dynamics head on.
We'll talk about how to deal with those colleagues who seem to be, like, experts at derailing meetings.
Exactly. Stay tuned for part 3. All right, so we're back and ready to tackle those tricky personalities, the ones that can turn a meeting into a total disaster.
Yeah, those are the situations where you really need to, like, up your meeting game. But don't worry, there are definitely ways to deal with them.
Okay, good. Let's start with the dominator,
Yes.
the person who just loves to hear themselves talk. They always have to be the center of attention.
Yeah.
How do you stop them from, like, hijacking the entire meeting?
Well, with dominators, you have to set some really clear boundaries
Okay.
and redirect their energy. You could say something like, Professor Smith, those are all great points, but let's hear from some other people too.
Mm.
You could also try, like, setting time limits for how long each person can talk.
Oh, like a timer.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Uh,
But what about the naysayer? The person who's always negative.
oh, yeah, the one who always says, that'll never work, or we already tried that.
Yeah, it's so draining. How do you deal with that?
It's important to, like, acknowledge their concerns, but then challenge them to come up with solutions instead.
Okay.
You could say, Professor Jones, I get why you're skeptical, but what do you think we should do instead?
Oh, I like that. So it's like, okay, you pointed out the problem, now help us fix it.
Exactly.
What about the person who just loves to argue?
Oh, the conflict lover.
Yeah. They always seem to be looking for a fight.
With those folks, you have to try and, like, depersonalize things.
What do you mean?
Like, focus on the facts and the data,
Okay.
not opinions or emotions. You could be like, let's look at the research on this. What does the evidence tell us?
So it's about staying objective.
Right.
But honestly, sometimes none of that works. Like you're stuck with someone who's just going to disrupt the meeting no matter what.
Yeah, that happens. And if that's the case, you might have to, like, talk to the department chair or someone higher up.
Okay, so there's a backup plan,
Mm,
but hopefully it doesn't come to that.
right.
So as we're wrapping up this deep dive into making meetings matter in academia, what are like the big things people should remember?
I think the main thing is that even though academia is, its own world, the basic rules for good meetings still apply. You need a clear purpose, a focused agenda, the right people in the room, ground rules, a parking lot for those side conversations, and clear action items at the end.
And a sense of humor helps too, right?
Oh, definitely.
Because sometimes you just got to laugh.
Yeah, for sure.
And speaking of academia, if anyone's looking for a new job, in higher ed, check out academicjobs.com.
They have listings for all kinds of positions at universities all over.
That's awesome. So the next time you're dreading a meeting, just remember what we talk about.
Yeah, a little bit of planning and the right strategies can make a huge difference.
That's great advice. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.